In earlier videos, I have criticized the Seventh-day Adventist Church for false doctrine such as soul sleep for people that go to heaven, and for saying or claiming that there is no biblical basis for Sunday as the day of Christian worship. But in this video, I want to take a different turn and defend the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Just because you're wrong to claim that the papacy equals the Antichrist, equals the beast, at least you're right about the fact that the Roman Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon. So you've got that much right. Just because you're wrong about Daniel 8:14 and the so-called investigative judgment, that is not the foundation upon which your church is built. You can actually jettison that doctrine, and you still have a basis for maintaining your denomination. The positive part or the strength of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is their desire to understand Bible prophecy and to emphasize the second coming and the judgment. Now, just because they've gotten a lot of that wrong, still it's the desire, the effort they've made. It's something to be proud of. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and if you do have something to be ashamed of, at least you have more to be proud of than you do to be ashamed of. If I'm not mistaken, the word Adventist refers to the second Advent, and that's what their emphasis is on. Well, your emphasis is on, and that is as it should be. We should be forward looking toward the future, to the second coming, and not ignoring the second coming just because so many preachers and evangelists and teachers have made false forecasts as to the date and the circumstances of the second coming. That emphasis on the second coming is to your credit, and it really should be accepted as the real basis for your church, regardless of the fact that your doctrine of Daniel 8:14 is totally mistaken. Let me give you my alternative explanation for the 2300 years in Daniel 8:14. You take the first part of that chapter. It talks about a battle between the Greeks and the Persians. Now that battle can actually be narrowed down to the battle of Isis, ISSUS. That's because at that battle, it's a known fact that the Greeks charged at the Persians, and the Greeks were outnumbered like 10 to 1, 40,000 against 400,000, and they won the battle because the Persians ran from the field. They were intimidated, they were spooked by the Greeks running at them. and you add 2,300 years to that. Okay, that battle took place. Um, oh, that battle took place in the year 333 BC, and you add the 2,300 years to it, and it brings us to 1967, AD 1967. And why would that be the right year? Well, this prophecy has to do with the cleansing of the temple, or at least the temple area, the temple site, because the temple is no longer there. But in 1967, the temple site was cleansed of Muslim ownership. Muslims being a false religion, it was like a stain on that area, the fact that they owned that area. And the removal of their ownership due to the victory of the Israeli forces in the Six-Day War of June 1967. That would fit the context of this chapter. And now, right after that victory, the Israeli General Moshe Dayan, the guy that wore a cap, a cover on his eye, and he gave the control of the temple area back to the Muslims. But there's a difference there. The Muslims don't really answer to some Muslim authority, the Jordan, a nation of Jordan. They do answer to, they are held accountable, they are under the Israeli state authority. So there is a difference. Now, why would the Jews give the area back to the Muslims, sort of on a rental basis? Because if the Jews took control of the area and maintained control themselves, they were concerned about hot-headed Jewish zealots trying to destroy the Dome of the Rock and to rebuild a Jewish temple. And so it makes sense for the Jews, Moshe Dayan, to give control of the area back to the Muslims. It's a little bit like if I own a house and then I lose the house to foreclosure, and then a new owner, if he rents me the house, I'm still in control of the house, but I'm under the new owner. Now, that's a little bit like what it is with the Muslims and the Jews concerning the temple area. I'm about to wrap this up. I want to say that a really important part of your doctrine that you will change will be the part in Revelation 13 where it talks about the deadly wound that was not deadly, that the beast recovers from the deadly wound. Now, because it's not deadly. Now, this is actually talking about Russia recovering after nuclear war. See, nuclear war is supposed to be deadly to both sides, according to the doctrine called MAD, M-A-D, Mutual Assured Destruction. But Russia will recover. Russia will emerge unscathed after the war that they start, because America has disarmed. And so when the world sees Russia recover and emerge without a scratch, so to speak, the world will be amazed. And that's what that chapter is talking about. The world was not amazed when the Catholic Church regained what it had lost under Napoleon. The world was not amazed at that. It's ridiculous for you to believe that. But when Russia does bomb America and bomb Rome and destroy the Catholic Church headquarters, the Vatican, I trust that you will be crushed by the fact that your doctrine has been disproved. Because Russia, Gorbachev is the Antichrist. And that's not what you're teaching. But I hope that you will be able to bounce back from your this surprise that will hit you like a punch in the belly. But I want you to bounce back and realize that your old nemesis, the Catholic Church, headquarters is through. It's finished. So, and I hope that you will join with me in celebrating the fact that Christ is on the way. The coming of the Antichrist is a sign that Christ's return is imminent. One thing in your favor, Seventh-day Adventist folks, one thing in your favor is you don't believe in a 7-year tribulation like so many fundamentalists or evangelicals. They're terribly wrong. The tribulation will be 5 months. Revelation 9, verse 5 and 10 actually says it in black and white. And it actually describes a time of occupation, which is what the tribulation will be for Western and Eastern Europe. Russia will occupy Europe, and occupation occurs after a war. War is a time of killing, and the occupation is a time when the killing is over. And that's what chapter 9 of Revelation, this particular passage, is talking about. It says, men will seek death, but death will flee from them. It's talking about a time when they're not being killed. It's a time of occupation. And so this is the time of the occupation of Europe. The 5 months is a time of the Russian occupation of Western Europe, and that time is synonymous with the length of the tribulation. So I'm glad that I remembered to congratulate you about the fact that you are not among the dupes that have been deceived or have been taken in by this false doctrine about a 7-year trib, which is based on Daniel 9, 26 and 27. They're totally wrong what they believe. Oh my God, I've made some videos about that. So I would like you to look them up and look at them and leave comments. I'm not getting comments like I used to. I don't know if YouTube is sabotaging me. As far as the Antichrist, Gorbachev's name, if you take the Russian spelling of his last name and you count the Russian alphabet according to the system that was used in the 1st century, where the first 9 letters are the numbers 1 through 9, the next 10 letters are the tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then the rest of the letters are the hundreds. Now, according to that system, Gorbachev adds up to 636. So we're falling short. But if we go to the letter M, we take the letter M for the initial for Mikhail. Now, it counts as 30. So the 30 plus the 636 adds up to a perfect 666. And there's much more to it, why he is the Antichrist. Gog is the Antichrist, and Gorbachev is actually what the word Gog stands for. Gog is simply a glimpse of the full name. And the first letters of Gorbachev equal the first letters, the letters of Gog. Thirdly, Gorbachev has that mark, that really ugly mark on his forehead, on the right-hand side. And that agrees with Revelation 13, where it talks about the right hand and the forehead. Now, if you combine those two, you have the idea of a mark on the right-hand side of his forehead. Now there's a Romanian priest who was a seer, a visionary. He died in the 60s, 1960s. And he said the Antichrist would have a mark. So his followers today, there was a video on YouTube. I should have the name. I'll have to put that in the description box under this video when I look it up. But his followers say that, going by what he said about the mark, Gorbachev is the Antichrist. Think of what I'm saying. These people agree with me. I'm the one saying Gorbachev is the Antichrist. And I finally found a group of people that agree with me about that. God led me to find that video. That obscure little video. And I am overjoyed. At least I should be overjoyed. I'm not overjoyed because I tend to not be grateful for the things that God does for me, because there's a lot of things that he has not done for me that I want him to do. And so I'm tempted to be ungrateful, which is terrible. In closing, I would say to all the Seventh-day Adventist members that I would recommend, not that it matters, not that my recommendation means that much, but I would say there's no need for you to leave the Seventh-day Adventist Church just because a lot of your doctrine is false. The fact is that you have the fellowship. You have a good church, you have good hymns, you have good evangelists like Doug Batchelor. I agree with him wholeheartedly about his teaching that there are 4 women in the New Testament that are actually the same woman. There was a Catholic Pope in the 1500s or the 1600s that had the same idea. And I think it's glorious that there was such a pope, and that Doug Batchelor can see this truth. Of course, it's speculation, but we'll find out eventually, won't we? There's no need for Christians to leave this church just because of the false doctrine. You can still believe in the true doctrines and put the false doctrine aside. And everybody in the church will realize the false doctrines as far as, who the Antichrist is or what the Antichrist is. When Russia bombs this country, when that happens, it's time for people to come together, and you should remain members of your churches and continue being vegetarians and continue maintaining your system of hospitals and so forth. And you can get your radio stations back on the air when the electric grid is restored, because it will be destroyed temporarily due to the Russian attack, which I'm expecting this year. Look up my latest video. The title is What's Coming in 2020. Uh, and I emphasize in closing that I should be grateful that you all don't believe in a 7-year trib. That's very, very wonderful. And the alternative to the 7-year trib, like I say, is the 5-month trib. And let me uh, put in a plug for the 5-month trib. Christ said, Revelation 3, I think it's verse 11, and Revelation 21 and 22. He said that I come quickly. I come quickly. And I should count the number of times he said it. I haven't done that. But the idea is that if this come quickly, it refers to a short period of time at the end of which he comes, then this would actually fit the 5-month idea. Because if you start the countdown with the beginning of the tribulation, which means the time that Russia bombs America and takes Western Europe. Now, if that's the beginning of the period at the end of which he comes quickly, it makes sense for him to say, I come quickly. Because if he comes just 5 months after Russia takes over the world, that is coming quickly. He is living up to what he's saying. He's keeping his promise. Whereas if he comes 7 years after Russia takes over and after the trib starts, that's nothing. That's not coming quickly. It's ridiculous. So you can see that what I'm saying does make sense. And lastly, but not least, I want to emphasize that your church is based on the perfectly reasonable and perfectly justifiable and something to be proud of, doctrine of the second coming, and your desire to understand Bible prophecy about the end time. And so you have nothing to be ashamed of.